Hello, this is Brad Stepp with Stepp Manufacturing. Today I'm going to show you how to install a new igniter gasket and also how to check your air. To replace your gasket kit, you will need a 5/16 nut run and your gasket kit. In your gasket kit there will be 3 gaskets. One for your photo eye, one for in between your igniter and the mount, and one that goes in between the mount and the main burner housing. I will now show you how to adjust your small and large air adjustments on your burner. Always make sure too that this plastic plug is not. You will suck air through this and you can throw off your air to fuel mixture ratio. So always make sure your gaskets on your igniter are good and your plug is not melted and in place. Alright, for the small air adjustments, there's 2 bolts. One right next to your solenoid and one in between your ports. The one in between the ports usually is not tight. That's just kind of there as a guide. So you'll loosen your top one. And you should be able to move your small air adjustment. Your small air adjustment will be this little metal finger that's pointing at your gauge 1 through 10. So for this instance, we'll just set it at 5. To adjust your large air adjustment, there is a 5/16 bolt with a square nut on this band here. Once that is loose, you can adjust your large air adjustment. Your sticker on the band shows where your setting is. When replacing your gasket kit, first thing you will want to do is unplug your burner. After you have unplugged your burner, use a 1/4-inch wrench to loosen the primary mount. There's 2 bolts, one on each corner. Your primary mount will pivot off and expose your wire connections. The next thing you will want to do is loosen your 5/16 bolts to swing open the igniter housing. You can swing your tabs forward and open the igniter housing. This will expose the wires that we need to pull through the mount. There's your 2 yellow wires not used, the blue wire, and the black wire. So you will have to undo your wire nuts for the black wire for your ground and the wire nut for your blue wire, the power. And now feed those wires through the housing and undo your ground wire. The next thing you will want to do is remove your photo eye mount and photo eye. To do this, there's a little detent. You will push the photo eye forward. Once you have that loose, pull forward until it comes out of the tab and then pull back towards yourself, releasing the photo eye. You can now replace 2 of the 3 gaskets. Remove your photo eye, your old photo eye gasket, and before installing the new one, punch out the center hole. You can now see there's 2 little cut marks where you can line up on either tab. The next gasket you will replace is this gasket around the igniter springs. This one is stuck down with an adhesive. So for this I will not actually be replacing it, but just remove your adhesive and replace. I usually use a little brake clean to clean the surface before applying the new gasket. Now your last gasket, you will have to loosen up your 2 5/16 bolts on the igniter itself. These hold the igniter to the hinged mount. You'll now pull your wires through the small hole. You may have to take off these wire nuts as well for the yellow wires not being used. Now you have the igniter removed from the hinged mount. You can pick out the old gasket . And replace this with the new gasket. You will have to thread your wires through the center hole. You will now put your springs through the 2 holes in your gasket. Make sure that's kind of seated in place. And now you can reroute your wires through your mounting plate. Now remount your igniter to the mounting plate with your 5/16 bolts. Do not over tighten these bolts. It is very easy to crack your igniter housing. You can usually see your gap along this top edge tighten up. Now you will reroute your wires and reinstall your photo eye. Just be careful when putting your photo eye through the new gasket. Push it through and then hook it under the tab. Now push back until you hear it snap in place. Always make sure your wires are routed nice and tight. We will rehook up the ground wire. Put the wire nut back on. Now our ground is secure. We will hook our power wire back up. So we'll route through the burner housing back over to our blue wire. Put a wire nut back on there. When installing your wire nuts, always make sure to give them a little tug to make sure they are tight. Make sure your wires are tucked in nice and neat so they won't get pinched when we close this housing. Install your wire nuts on the 2 yellow wires not being used on the back of the igniter. These are for if you were not using a primary control to run your burner. When closing the hinged igniter housing, make sure these wires do not get pinched in the photo eye gasket. You can now swing your tabs back shut and tighten your 5/16 bolts. Reinstall your primary and primary mount using your 1/4 inch wrench. And then reconnect your power supply. You have now finished installing the igniter gasket. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to maintain your Stepp equipment. For more service-related questions, please call or email.